Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 100th episode of the Boob Tube Boys. I'm like a whole different person. I'm Van Lee, but I am excited and upbeat, and everyone knows I'm upbeat, right, Spencer Hendricks?
Ding, 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 ding.
Right, Brian Vaughn?
Absolutely, and I am also very upbeat all the time, especially when we've done 100 episodes of a podcast.
I think when you do 100 episodes, it turns into a game show.
Oh,
Yeah.
And you could win the following prizes. Tide, the whitener.
You left out how it's a shitload of Tide, though.
Well, yeah.
Which
People
actually,
imagine
okay, those prizes like that, when I was a kid, I loved watching like Wheel of Fortune, and they used to have a lot of prize rounds. And when it was something like a lifetime supply of Tide, when I was a kid, I'd be bummed out at even seeing that. Now, that sounds incredible.
It's like that will save me a lot of money
yeah,
over time.
over the span of my life.
Well, this week we'll be releasing two parts of our 100th episode because we're going to have a lot to record, lots of bonus stuff. We'll have listener questions. We'll have skits. We'll have sketches, all kinds of cool stuff. So stay tuned for it. And you know what else we're doing? We're covering a show that you folks out there have been clamoring for. It's a show that lives in infamy among the Boob Tube Boys. Who wants to say it out loud?
I'm not,
No one really
I'm not doing
wants
it.
to.
I'll bite the bullet. It's according to Jim.
That's right, according to Jim. Now, we've played according to Jim clips on this podcast, this very podcast,
Lots of
many
times.
before.
More than a lot of shows we've covered.
Surprisingly, yes.
Probably more than all of them.
But we're actually going to talk the show. We'll be covering Season 4, Episode 21, Kentucky Fried Beltzmann, which is the 100th episode of According to Jim. We thought it was fitting. Great job, Brian, for picking this episode.
Yeah, we thought we would kind of juxtapose what we do with our 100th episode with what According to Jim did with its 100th episode.
Because we're very similar.
Yeah.
Particularly in our humor styles.
And because we got to do, we love like broad family comedy with a little bit of a misogynist bent.
Stick around because we're going to divide this up into three parts, about 7 minutes of each of this According to Jim episode going to each of us. I'll be leading us off. I'll get into it here shortly because we've got a lot to cover. But then we'll have bonus segments in between. Stay tuned for it. And we also have, I will announce, a skit we'll be performing at the end with some special guests. Stay around for that.
It's incredible. Just to kind of let you know, like, According to Jim, we felt obliged to cover it because if we're going to be doing all this fun stuff in the episode, we should also have to talk about According to Jim. We are not people of pure pleasure. You must
No.
balance the good with the bad.
We're all pessimists here, and we have to make sure that pessimistic side shows up.
So, yeah, Van, tell us about According to Jim.
So according to Jim, I have a little bit of information about the show at the beginning, how it was created. I'll be brief, though, because obviously we have a lot to cover here. The show itself is just your standard blue-collar family comedy. Follows the life of the titular Jim, his wife Cheryl. He has 3 kids, Ruby, Gracie, and Kyle. I know which one's Kyle because of the
I
gender.
definitely
but other than
know
that,
them apart and think they're characters that are distinct.
Well, other distinct characters include Cheryl's brother Andy, her sister Dana, and then a whole host of other freaks that talk to this family.
I had no idea Andy was Cheryl's brother. That
I didn't
whole
either.
episode. Okay.
It took me a while to not have Dana in my notes as other woman.
The main actors to know in the show are Jim Belushi, who plays the oafish asshole Jim, and Belushi's the big dumb face-having brother of dead comedian John Belushi. We all know the more famous Belushi. I don't know if that's necessarily even warranted. Was John Belushi even really funny?
I'm so glad you asked this because this was a thing I wanted to ask you guys. I don't know. I don't know that for me that the Belushi sense of humor ever worked. I guess is the idea that John had some sort of charismatic humor.
I think it's a little Chris Farley-like.
Yeah, I don't know that style of 80s humor is in our wheelhouse, in our collective wheelhouse, so we're probably not the right ones to judge that. I don't enjoy John Belushi movies or his antics, but I think at the time period it probably swept the nation.
Well, like Blues Brothers was huge,
Yeah.
and I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it's any good.
They must
or
have been
what.
doing something right,
Yeah.
but it's not really, it's not for me. It's not my kind of comedy.
My only exposure to Blues Brothers was just like when it would be on TBS or whatever, and I'd see 15 minutes of it and be like, I don't like this.
And then move on with
And
your
then
life,
move on.
with
And
your
I-
kid life.
And that's the thing. I think Jim Belushi has always been the black sheep here, though.
Okay.
Like, especially now after John has passed, I don't think Jim was ever considered some sort of comedic genius.
But you think maybe because John died, everyone misses John, so they'll put a little bit of like, oh, well, I like Jim then.
It's
that sort of thing.
possible, and I also recently saw a movie called Blowout with John Travolta that Jim Belushi randomly is in a supporting role. He's really pretty good, but I guess he was doing that, in the late 70s, early 80s, like doing serious acting.
Oh, okay.
While John was doing comedy. So I guess like what I'm trying to say is it seems to me that Jim found commercial success, but I don't think like he's I think comedians think John Belushi is funny, but I don't think they think Jim Belushi is funny.
Oh, interesting.
Well, they're right about that.
They are right. They're very right about that. I guess he's beloved by people because he keeps appearing in things and keeps getting roles, and I don't know.
Do you know anything about him personally? Is he a good guy?
He is.
He loves the blues.
His politics agree with us.
Wow.
Which
I would
surprised
never
the
have
shit out of
thought
me.
that. Well, I guess the character he plays in the show.
No, he's in real life, he's like a big pot grower. And he has his own brand. And
you got his email or anything?
I don't on me, but we'll get it later. But yeah, no, I guess as a person, I probably might like him a little bit, but everything I've seen him in, which is mostly according to Jim, makes me loathe him with every fiber of my being. Cheryl is played by Courtney Thorne-Smith, who is also a main character on Melrose Place, which we covered before. And I can't help but think in real life that she could have done better than according to Jim. And also her character, and according to Jim, could have done better than Jim.
That's definitely true.
She's had a rough time of it between being married to Jim and having to talk about that Carrot Top movie on Conan when Norm Macdonald roasted her.
That was her?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Go check out that clip somewhere. Now, if you thought Jim was fat and obnoxious, wait until you see Andy.
I did, by the way.
Oh, you did? Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's confirmed. Andy is being played by, and I air quotes this, comedian Larry Joe Campbell, whose name fits what that guy looks like.
Yeah, that's perfect. Up top, what do you think about how his face looks?
Swollen.
Mm-hmm. He's very, well, this isn't always the color he is, but he's very red a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if he's like does he pump himself up with jumping jacks before he starts a scene or something? Is he that fair?
He's that fair. He's one of those redhead guys that's borderline blonde and is so pale.
Kind of translucent.
Yeah, anything you do, if you walk from one end of the room to the other, particularly when you're 400 pounds like this guy is or whatever, you get worn out and you turn beet red, and that's what he does in this show.
How easy do you guys bruise?
Larry Joe Campbell also still continues to get roles. He's had some bit parts in that show, The Orville, which I think was the Seth MacFarlane guy.
Sure was.
In space.
And that is him doing a Star Trek comedy or something?
I don't think it's a comedy. I think NBC or whatever the studio was wanted a comedy because of him. Started as a comedy and then it became more dramatic.
The trailer that I saw one trailer for that thing and it was supposed to be funny and then what they showed. So I'm guessing they probably figured that was their in with audiences. It looked absolutely awful. It wasn't funny, but I could tell they were trying to make it funny.
I bet you anything Seth MacFarlane's working him singing show tunes into it somehow.
Larry Joe Campbell is also in Euphoria, American Vandal, Weeds. He's had a bunch of roles.
Wow.
We'll also touch on Kimberly Williams Paisley, who plays quirky sister Dana throughout most of the show's run. Williams Paisley is married to country music superstar Brad Paisley. She's also been in other stuff like Nashville, the Father of the Bride movies from the 90s. If you remember
I
those.
was shocked to find that out when I was looking at her IMDb because I have seen that.
The George Lopez Show, Less Than Perfect, and of course, the 2015 movie Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip.
Oh, I see. Road Chip.
Mm-hmm. There's also Chipwrecked.
Oh,
where they're on a boat. But
that's
chipmunk, chip, you understand?
Because that's a word too. And it kind of, that is really playing fast and loose for a title of something.
Yeah, not like a tagline fine, but a title.
Yeah.
Her and her country music superstar husband have a couple of kids, which they have named William Huckleberry and Jasper, because clearly they're just going with the brand.
Okay, but
I like Jasper.
That's all I was going to say. Yeah, would you guys name anything Jasper? Probably from The Simpsons.
I was just going to say,
sidewalks
sidewalks not for fancy walking.
That's a paddling. There's actually not a lot of info out there about the creation of this show, because I'm sure even huge fans of the series don't really care about it that much. It never did fantastic in the ratings. It did all right. It had 8 seasons.
Yeah, it survived. You know, when I was reading the books I read on The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Seinfeld, I think a lot was documented because people making it and around it were like, something is happening here. That's
Something
different.
special.
That's different in TV. We need to write everything down. We need to film everything we can. I think with According to Jim, they were like, This is a job. We go to the job, we film it, we go home.
And it really was created like you made jokes about recently. It was, what comedian can we make
Yeah.
a show around? And
Let's
that's what
just
they did.
give somebody one.
And it's like, oh, we're going to make jokes like women like shopping and
Men don't like shopping. Did you say when this show started? Like when?
2000. I believe it was in the year 2000, but it was right at the turn of the century.
It has a kind of awful frozen in time hellscape feel. Like the episode we watched, I really couldn't. It could have been anywhere from about 30 years, and I wouldn't have been able to say you were wrong.
The way they had that refrigerator front and side covered full of shit gave me so much anxiety. I felt like I was trapped at a relative's home as a child, and I could not leave.
My favorite tidbit that I did read about the show and the creation of the show actually came from Belushi himself. I'll share it with you here. He said of the original script and his adjustments to it, originally it called for Jim to go to the wife and apologize, but I said to the writers, why do we have to do a show where the guy is going to apologize at the end of every episode? Was he really wrong? He's contrite, sure, but isn't he just being a man?
Yuck.
The rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
That's it for the creation of the show. Let's get into it. I'll do my first third here,
That's
just
great.
like we always would, and then we'll move into something else.
Yeah, you're going to tell us about 7 minutes and 10 seconds of the least enthralling television you can imagine.
You know the expression 7 minutes
7
in heaven?
minutes in heaven. I
Yeah.
was thinking the same thing.
7 minutes in heaven with Evan right here. That's what's going
Yeah.
on. Huh?
According to Jim, it is.
7 minutes in heaven is where you go in the closet and make out with Jim Belushi, right?
Correct, yes.
Specifically that, yes. Or Larry Joe Andy. What's his last name?
Larry Joe Andy. Campbell.
I think that's pretty much right. I could find it in here, but I'm not.
I
it was
don't think it
Campbell, wasn't
warrants
it?
it.
It's
He
Campbell,
was a
yeah.
Campbell.
Campbell, yeah. Like Dave Campbell.
Like the soup.
Yeah.
Wait, Dave Campbell.
The
founder of
baseball
Wendy's?
announcer.
Oh, that's Dave Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
The show opens with a jaunty little piano riff that tells you just how laid back but still pretty cool this show is as Jim and Dana sit at the table sipping coffee, their faces buried in the morning newspaper. Cheryl's at the stove cooking some meat for her man, and the 3 Jim children come bursting into the kitchen to tell their always supportive father some very important news. One of the girls, whose names I most assuredly do know, says, Daddy, guess what? And Jim, being a great father, excitedly asks his dear offspring, what's up? She says, I got married last night. This, of course, blows both Cheryl and Jim's minds because their daughter's like 7 or something like that.
Yeah, and they're sitting here thinking, that can't be legal.
So Jim uses just every ounce of his face. He points it at his daughter to show his surprise. And the other daughter helpfully offers that not only did the other one get married, but that it was to the heartthrob Dylan Pike.
This is big news. All of the girls at recess have been talking about how they want to get with Dylan Pike.
I Googled this because, sometimes I'll be like, what is this? And then Johnny Radical or somebody will be like, well, that's this very famous pop culture moment. It's a real person.
And
It
you
is
just
not.
don't know because we don't know
Right.
those things.
Yeah, no, this is not a real person. It came up with some profile for some kid who plays Fortnite, and that was it. And I don't think this, according to Jim, episode was about that kid.
Extra bonus points, and I'm not going to be giving many, to According to Jim for picking what I believe to be a believable 2000s era child name, Dylan Pike.
Yeah, that's very true.
What would you want to marry him?
Would I let my daughter
Look.
marry him?
Dylan's got it all, but he doesn't have it all.
Young boy here with his big round head and dopey eyes, I think it's Kyle, reiterates that this did in fact happen, the girl's getting married. She really did get married to Dylan Pike. And also, this boy's wearing a cool rocket ship t-shirt where it's says blast off and there's a rocket.
One of the
I like
cooler
that.
parts of the show, yeah.
Jim yells at Cheryl about this, and Dana gets mad. She tells the little girl she's upset that the little girl got married before she did, and the word flabbergasted gets just tossed around at leisure.
Yeah, that's not a word you can do that with either.
That was actually the whole punchline. I think
Yeah.
it was Cheryl that said that, right?
Mhm.
That's
First.
That's Cheryl's little gag in this scene is she said flabbergasted.
There's the rule of 3s in comedy where
Mhm.
if you do something 3 times, it becomes funnier. I do think it has to be kind of funny the first time, though. This scene also has a really annoying TV trope for me, which is woman who is 29 and not married, and it's a running joke that maybe one day I'll find a man, and it's come on with that.
Yeah, they took very little time to get into one of their women to compete on getting married first.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest first scene jokes they hit you with here is Dana's got many lines that they wrote for her in this episode that are awful and very cringe-worthy. Yeah, and this was the first.
But it's not the only joke coming out of this scene, guys. Finally, with a big grin on their faces, all three kids yell in unison, April Fools!
Oh, shit. It was a good one. Thought that kid got married.
Yeah, that's a twist I didn't see coming. I assumed this was going to be a legal ordeal.
Jim, Cheryl, and Dana tell the kids sarcastically that they got them good, and the kids wander off the set. And we don't have to bother with them much this episode.
Yeah, it's good.
They're done.
Good.
Once they are gone, Jim mumbles about how lame their prank was and says, I'm better than children at pranks. And Dana tells him he needs to teach them better.
To do pranks better?
To do pranks better, yeah. Jim agrees, but says after last year's masterpiece that he pulled on Cheryl, he has retired from pranking. Cheryl reminds him that he didn't just retire, he was threatened with divorce. And Jim, who is so funny and clever, says, it was funny. You eventually got home, and look, you got to practice your Spanish.
So we assume Jim's prank is leaving his wife in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't never been, but I'd sure like to go.
And later in the episode, we learned a lot of terrible things Jim's done on April Fool's Day. He's not a good guy.
No, I would go so far as to say he's a menace.
All right, I'm going to tie it all together and make this all worthwhile. According to Jim, is the origin story of Frank from Raymond.
Okay.
He's obnoxious and awful like
Absolutely.
Jim, but then everyone finally realizes he's just worthless and he becomes Frank.
I like this a lot because you can see Jim as a livelier version of Frank.
Yeah, and maybe not quite as ill-intending initially, and then just gets more and more bitter as the years go by, which we do, and then it just becomes malicious down the road.
It's a slippery slope, and then next thing you know, you're standing before all the nude men at your lodge and they do not like you.
And you're ripping your wife's foundation makeup off her face. Telling her get that crap off her face or whatever he says.
Oh, the perils of life.
And that's just after, of course, you watch the Veggie Wedge Man. Just then, funny man Andy comes walking in and he's dressed and ready for work. Only instead of his usual pale carrot-tinged skin, he's green from head to toe. How wacky.
Just for a second, I was like, is this Shrek 2?
My thought was that it's like some shitty version of the Hulk, like to where he's shitty enough to where you wouldn't really give a fuck if he's angry or not.
Yeah.
Smugly, Andy turns to Dana and says, Dana, thank you for the bath salts, like he does with his dumb fucking face. And then he just starts screaming that he's green everywhere.
So I guess at some point we're to assume Dana gave Andy a bunch of bath salts.
You know what the second assumption is? That both his dick and his butthole are now green.
It's all green, yeah. This whole family is really into April Fools.
It's like their main holiday, I think. Like, I bet they worship some weird pagan god. And so their only thing they do is worship a trickster demon or something. So they celebrate only April Fools. Yeah, I've got this figured out.
The scene fades out to a cacophony of laughter into the short, sweet, and harmonica-laden accordion Jim intro sequence where we see lots of shapes, a couple of colors. Cash is smiling and laughing, and Jim carries around Courtney Thorne-Smith like an ogre carrying away a princess. Oh, and at one point you get one of those like Elvis-y, oh, babe, things in the intro.
It is truly horrendous, the whole thing, but it is very short. So there is that.
Yeah, that's the benefit to it. Okay, cold open where they name drop April Fool's Day, check. Intro with harmonica, check. Time to get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. We find ourselves in the Jim garage with something I simply did not expect to see, but totally understand that it exists in the world of According to Jim, which is Jim's band.
I would like to quickly note for the audience, in case they haven't picked up on this yet, Jim Belushi enjoys blues music, white blues music.
Shit, I didn't notice until you just said that.
Yeah, it gives better context for the scene.
Do we ever get a name for this band?
Yes, I'll give it to you now, actually.
I did not notice it.
Is it Billy Vegas and the Renegaders or whatever?
Oh, what was the
From
other
King
one
of
I
Queens?
said? Dispenser? It was the Cinnamon Blasters or something like that? No, this is, by the way, a real band.
All those people, all those men?
Those are all real people in a real band that performs in life, not just according to Jim.
Real life?
But life.
Hmm.
The band is called Jim Belushi and the Sacred Hearts.
Yuck.
And apparently, he does a backflip every single live performance.
Well, that's cool.
That's
I
amazing.
like that.
I can't believe he can do that.
Spencer and I were in a band together, and we never did that.
No.
And by the way, the theme song to the show called Jimmy's Song, and it was performed by Jim Belushi and the Sacred Heart.
Oh, wow.
Does it not have any words in it?
There are a couple versions I found out. There are one that's like 2.5 minutes long that has like the that
Okay,
sort of
because I
thing.
just didn't think the band had a singer from the scene we got.
Well, Jim Belushi sings.
He was just doing harmonica
and
and
sings.
they were just jamming. I didn't know if he sang or if they just didn't do that.
And in a way, isn't harmonica a type of singing?
I guess, yeah, it's like your alternate vocal line.
Yeah.
I feel like when you've got your front man who's not real good at being a front man or singing,
Like a middleman.
you give him either a tambourine or you give him a harmonica.
Or like anything they can beat on, and like a dog you'd like to occupy so it
Yeah.
doesn't get into something.
Like I'm cooking dinner, let's throw the dog a bone
Yeah.
so he stays away. This band does all the music for this show, actually, and they've apparently played for people like Al Gore, former California Governor Gray Davis, and supposedly even Bill Clinton is a big fan.
Lots of
I believe-
politicians.
And the kinds you would expect.
Well, the According to Jim version of this band features Jim doing, like we said, what he does in the real band. He plays harmonica, he sings, and that's exactly what he's doing here. Andy's on keyboards, Beltzmann is on guitar, Tony is on drums, and John on bass. Now, apparently for this show, they just didn't give a vast majority of them last names. That's a fact. So they're just known as John and Tony.
I wondered about this because it was just I very briefly was reading stuff about the show. I did not want to spend time doing that, but I couldn't really find last names, definitive ones.
Well, and like Dana gets married at some point in the show, so she gets a last name.
Oh, good for Dana.
And I don't think they revealed Jim, the titular Jim's last name, until like the last season. It's crazy.
That's weird.
I would also like to point out that, alluding to Spencer and I being in a band before, in this scenario, Spencer is the Andy and I am the Beltzman.
Yeah, you're eating fried chicken during the middle of the
No, and
performance.
you know, we're not thin either.
The guys are all honky-tonking like crazy in the garage, and they come to the end of the song, which causes Eminem Spokes Candy come to life Andy to start riding the keys from bottom to top in an over-the-top manner, which causes Jim to proclaim, "Oh, that sucked," which is accurate. I do agree that did in fact suck. But Andy counters with, "What? Like we're going to open for Rush?"
Okay, this confused me because stylistically, even if they were really good at their kind of music, why would that happen?
Can you imagine? You're like, oh, this honking, oh, and then there is trouble in the forest.
Today's Tom Sawyer is not Jim Belushi. What's weird about it is that image to me is it's like typically you'd want a band that like Rush fans would want to see.
Right.
Well, who knows?
Jim ignores this remark and grabs a case of beer, saying it'll either help us sound better or help us care less about the fucking awful music we're playing. The men all cheer, and Andy says, yeah, maybe it'll help me forget I'm spending the best years of my life with all you guys. And everyone just laughs and laughs and laughs.
This is one of those, I think this is another trope, like middle-aged men friends hanging out, razzing each other.
Mhm. John, the bassist, having collected a green beer, confronts the guitarist, Beltzmann, about his eating habits. Now, what are those eating habits? Well, Beltzmann is standing there playing an electric guitar and eating a fried chicken leg.
By the way, my fucking hero right here, Beltzmann.
Well, it's worth pointing out, you kind of hinted at this, Ryan, Beltzmann is not a handsome man. He's maybe 5'6", 265, big fat face, glasses. He looks like if George Costanza let himself go, which I think says a lot.
You know who he really looked like to me, and I don't know why, is the Bizarro George.
Okay, yeah, I could see
Something
it.
about him.
I actually thought, considering what they were talking about his diet being like, I actually thought he wasn't that big. He was just kind of round in general. But yeah, they make it out to that he's just constantly eating shit.
He certainly was not the guy in worst shape in the room.
No.
And on top of that, like, what are these guys tucking their shirts in for band practice for? Like a bunch of dweebs.
Yeah, don't be doing that.
Did you guys notice that Eugene Beltzman is his name? The actor was Mark Beltzman.
And most of the actors, John, Tony, whatever, they have the same name.
They don't bother
Mhm.
actually giving them different character names.
That's really funny because Beltzman is the most sitcom sounding name ever.
and
Yeah.
it's somehow real.
It's kind of cool that he got his real last name into the episode title.
But can you imagine the grease on those guitar strings, though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
No,
don't-
that's not good.
I
You
don't
would want...
think I've ever seen a musician eat and play.
I
at
tell
the
you
same
what, though,
time.
if you gave me one of those hand clamper things like you pick up dog poop with, one of those grip
Oh, yeah, yeah.
grip poles, and I could get the chicken with that, bring it to my face, chomp on the chicken, never getting my fingers in the grease.
Let me ask this. You know how, like a talented singer-songwriter, Tom Petty, for example,
Right.
because he plays
Better.
guitar.
You're saying he's better than Jim Belushi? Is that the implication here?
I'll be on record saying that, sure.
Okay.
He
I'll
plays
go with
guitar and harmonica. So he has one of
Right.
those things that wraps around your head that then you can just blow into the harmonica for.
Those.
You just put the chicken leg on that and then just
That
chomp
is
while you
even
play.
better. That is genius. And then I could put a harmonica on there later if I wanted to.
I think it would actually be pretty hard to eat and play music. It's like patting your belly or rubbing your belly and patting your head. I think it'd be tough.
I think it would be just like when I was really figuring out singing and playing at the same time, eating and playing at the same time.
I'll give you an example.
How about eating and singing at the same time?
Wow, if you can do that.
That's
you
how,
might choke.
That's how you wind up what I call stapping.
Might wind up Beltzmann.
Drums are another thing, too. Once you can separate your feet from your hands, it's a big
Right,
moment.
exactly that kind of thing. And Van means drums the instrument, not drums the chicken.
Yeah, not the
The
wing
chicken
portion.
food.
Like those fuckers who go to like Wingstop and they're like, I need all flats. Fuck you. Just order fucking wings.
As long as they got the bone in there, I'm eating them. And I would eat them if they were boneless, too.
Oh, yeah.
How can you not? I mean, it's no effort at all. You just pop them in your mouth.
I love wings.
Well, anyway, Beltzmann has some questions about John calling him out.
I don't know how you can put that junk in your body, Beltzmann. That is disgusting.
The fries, the chicken, or the cheese?
There's cheese in there, too?
In the fries. The future's here, man.
It sounds good.
I mean, I'd eat that.
I would
All
try
that
it.
sounds good.
Yeah.
I did not understand the outrage here. You'd think it was fucking broccoli casserole they talk about it.
Well, Jim Belushi, who is the same shape as Beltzmann, only a little bigger overall, says, why did you even bother eating? Why don't you just stick yourself in the heart? And so Beltzmann takes his chicken leg and starts poking himself in the
It's
chest with
real
it.
funny.
Yeah.
Fucking hilarious.
Yeah, Beltzman's on fire of saying really unfunny things in this scene.
Thankfully, someone who weighs less than a quarter of a ton comes into the scene as 90-pound Cheryl is holding a plastic tub in her hands. She greets the guys, then takes the tub to a corner where she's going to store it there in the garage. This prompts Jim to do one of those things that I hate where he goes, whoa, 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 whoa.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. He does that hovering thing like a parent does to a child, but to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's gross.
His tiny wife. He asks her if that's his treasured baseball card collection. And she says, yeah, I'm cleaning out the bedroom closet and I was moving it to store in here. And Jim just fucking loses his mind at this. Talks about how great his cards are. And he specifically mentions his piece de resistance, a 1954 mint grade Ernie Banks rookie card. Now, I forgot to mention, not only is Jim one of these guys love sports and nothing else kind of men, he's also a guys love Chicago sports and nothing else.
Yeah.
So he's all about the Cubs.
Yeah, he tells you what to put on your hot dog.
Bears?
Bears,
the
yeah.
football? Yeah. Oh, yeah, because there's like Ditka episodes where they talk about
Oh,
Ditka.
yeah.
You know who else
Makes
appears in
sense.
According to Jim is Wayne Newton.
He does. Actually, I almost did this. I compiled a list of guest stars because it's the who's who of everywhere.
I mean, I fucking
It's
said
absurd.
Wayne Newton's in the show.
Jim demands that this collection does not belong in the garage like tools, old magazines, and the fat men who comprise their band. He says, no way would I let Ernie Banks stay in the garage. And by the way, from now on, they just call it Ernie Banks. They don't say the Ernie Banks card. They just say Ernie Banks.
From here on out, I want everyone listening to this to imagine that the ghost of Ernie Banks is inside of a tiny hard plastic cube alongside a baseball card.
Screaming, help, help, let me out.
I do not want to be in According to Jim anymore.
And thanks to a game that we played where Brian made up rhymes, I can't think of Ernie Banks without thinking of gurney tanks.
Neither
anymore.
can
I
I.
thought of the same thing. Jim even says that he'd rather put his dumb kids out here than Ernie.
Agreed. I don't even remember those kids. We just talked about them, already forgot about them.
With a mouthful of somewhat chomped chicken, Beltzmann says he'd give his left nad for that rookie card. Nad in quotations, because that was a
Hadn't
quote.
heard that in a while.
But it seems 90s, 2000s. For
Yeah,
sure.
it does.
Definitely.
Cheryl says that's probably not a good trade, and she relents on moving the cards out to the garage. She'll leave them in the house. Jim says, wait a minute, I'll compromise with you. How about, Cheryl, you go make some room in the fridge and bring out some snacks for the men, you dumb fucking woman.
It was all I could do not to boo my screen during this. It was just like, no.
It was gross.
I already didn't like this. And then Jim's like, I've gone from heel to really bad heel.
And it's not the last time in this episode he
It
asked
is.
Cheryl for food.
No, I have a feeling that he might ask strangers.
If we could just do a count of every episode, how many times Jim asks Cheryl to make him something, I bet it's in the thousands.
You
by
would
the
not
end
want
of
to
the
play
show.
a drinking game of that.
Well, everyone on the studio audience here and the cast just laughs and laughs at this.
Some of them clap.
And Beltzmann reveals he'd give away his right nad for some apple pie.
I hadn't heard that in a while, but now I've heard it twice.
Full of beer, Jim says it's time to get back to it, so the fat men all grab their instruments and begin honking and tonking as the scene fades out to shitty music. The next day, or month, or perhaps a year later, we don't know, Cheryl and Dana are rearing the 3 children and braiding hair and reading or whatever you do with kids, when Jim comes bursting out into the room screaming, "It's an emergency!" Cheryl, knowing her disgusting husband well, says, "Jim, the spare toilet paper's under the sink," because he shits a lot.
Right.
Brian.
Well, first off, yes, I shit a lot. Second, I guarantee you Jim also shits a lot.
Definitely.
This felt true to life. It may be a stereotype, but there's no way Jim Belushi is not sore a lot.
I bet Beltzmann shits a lot too,
Oh, yeah.
It's
with
an
that
unending
diet.
stream. The chicken comes out whole.
with the cheese in it.
Oh, a bone.
Well, Jim protests here. He says, no, that's not the problem. The problem is Ernie Banks is missing. Not the card, the actual player. Ernie Banks died a few years ago.
Yeah. Which, yeah, he's missing from this realm.
Well, I guess he would have been alive at the time of filming.
Yeah, that's true. They should have had him guest star in this.
He probably didn't want to for some reason.
And pretty good, but not that great. Like, if you look at the career numbers,
For a shortstop,
For
although he
pretty
didn't,
nuts,
he didn't
yeah.
stay at shortstop
Yeah.
though.
he played a lot of third base, right?
First, I think by the
He moved
end,
to first,
the
okay.
worst position of them all.
Yeah, you got to just absolutely hit everything.
Cheryl urges caution here, and it has to be around here somewhere because it's not like anyone would take it.
This I don't like either. And it's the same thing that they gave Cheryl in the garage, where they presume she is so ignorant to the idea that an old baseball card could be worth money. You don't have to even know anything about sports to know that that's possible.
The other thing they do here that I just realized is they make her wrong.
Yeah.
Of course. Like, she's the voice of reason here.
Yeah, this
But
isn't
then
called
ultimately-
according to Cheryl Van.
R.E.
This
I know you get touchy about
this
according to Jim.
This is according to Jim. This is well thought out television. Do you think that goes along with kind of what you said Jim Belushi said about the show? When he
I
said
think so.
kind of like, no, we're not making a show where the man has to apologize. We're making a show where the man's a man and wherever the cards may fall, they fall.
We'll trample whatever's in our way to get there.
We're not making a show where the man wears the dress.
Wow, how did you know he said that verbatim? I have that in my notes.
It's like you have like a hotline right to Jim Belushi's brain.
Jim, of course, accuses the children born from his seed, saying they are like little raccoons with clothes on who just take everything. That may be right, but it just feels gross coming out of Jim's dumb head.
Yeah, I like raccoons more.
Yeah, the little people thumbs.
Yeah.
He then gets exasperated and says, "Grr, this is exactly why we need a vault." And I'll admit it got a chuckle out of me.
No, that was
Vault
funny.
got me.
This is one of two things that I laughed
Yeah,
at.
there's one more for me, too. Then there's a whole bit where Jim progressively offers more money, starting from a quarter to the kid who finds the card, but the youngest kid holds out for more money. There's a joke here about Jim caring more about the card than his wife's wedding ring, and I assure you, it's probably the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Mhm.
Yeah, never heard anything like it attempted in a sitcom.
The family is interrupted by a swollen, exceptionally pink Andy.
What was he doing before this scene?
I think he had to walk from the car to the house.
I think they made him green in the first scene to avoid that being every scene.
Give you a different look.
Yeah. You want to see him as all the Christmas colors.
He approaches everyone with dire news. It turns out he just heard from John the bassist. Beltzmann had a heart attack. When Jim asks how he is, Andy reveals that Beltzmann didn't make it. He's
What?
dead.
Beltzmann?
Pour one out for Beltzmann.
This could happen to any chicken-eating guitar player.
Everyone is shocked, and Dana mentions that it's even more surprising that it happened because he was in the prime of his life. He was tall, he was handsome, good-looking, but they correct her and say, no, you're thinking of John the bassist. Beltzmann was the hideous potbelly guy.
I think this would have been funnier if Dana's trying to be overly nice and acting like she really thought that about Beltzmann.
Oh, She, of course, then gets confused, thinking of the drummer, and it goes from there because clearly these people don't actually like their friends or know anything about them.
Anything about them.
Cheryl laments Beltzmann's poor widow and says, I'm going to go make a broccoli casserole. This seriously upsets Jim, who says, I thought we were having meatloaf tonight, which she then reveals, no, you're dumbass. I'm making the casserole for the grieving. Is that any better? What?
I did not.
Is this a trend?
Is meatloaf that much more appealing to people than broccoli
They
casserole?
both sound like a thing you'd give to someone who just
Yeah,
had a
they
family
do.
member die.
But
Either
is that a
one.
thing? I don't know. Somebody in my family dies. I'm not
Oh, yeah.
expecting someone to bring
No,
me
you
a
get
casserole.
lots of casseroles.
What?
It's like in the tradition of wakes and things like that, and some people still do it.
It's kind of like I don't know how to talk about how you had a bad thing happen. Here's some food.
Here's
See
a
you later.
Pyrex dish full of meat ingredient.
That
This
way,
is news to me. I guess this hit right on the nose.
Well, it hit on the nose to me only in that I know of it.
Yeah,
it has never
it's a
happened to
thing.
me. Like in my family deaths, it's like you got cards and stuff is what people would give you.
The girls leave to the kitchen, and Jim and Andy do a bit where they don't know Beltzmann's first name because, like I said, they don't actually like their friends or know anything about them because they're men, and that's what men do.
Men hate their friends, which leads me to this: hate you guys.
and you don't know our first names.
No, or last names.
Who are you guys?
Where am I?
The scene fades, and we open up in Beltzmann's house where his widow is being consoled by an older lady and a man. Jim, Cheryl, Dana, and Andy are here to talk to Beltzmann's wife, and Cheryl tells the mourning woman that she feels really bad for her and brought her a broccoli casserole. Jim, of course, says, broccoli casserole, like the woman hasn't suffered enough.
He can't stop about the broccoli casserole the entire episode.
It does sound like it's a bad casserole, to be fair. Cheryl
Yeah.
probably needs to work on that.
But I think casseroles are bad to begin with because you're taking like a dozen things that don't cook at the
Stick it in
same
a
time.
pot.
Just
Yeah.
mushing them in there.
I mean, it's fine.
I'd
Tamping
eat
it
it. Yeah,
down.
if I open the refrigerator and there's a casserole in there, I'd eat it.
Sure.
I mean, I wouldn't make it.
I also couldn't stop focusing on the casserole because, in case you're not aware, there's no plastic wrap, there's no lid.
Nothing.
It's just out, and it's a prop, obviously, but it looks
Yeah.
like a prop.
There's something extra about it being out in the room of where a man may have died.
Dana says her piece here and says, boy, that sucks for you. Beltzmann's wife says she doesn't know who these two are because people don't actually like their friends or know anything about them, blah, blah, blah. You're going to hear this a couple of times as the show goes along.
The world of According to Jim is very cold and barren.
There's also some stuff about Cheryl putting out donuts at every band practice, and that, of course, contributed to Beltzmann's death, and it's funny, blah, blah, blah. The girls go put the casserole in the kitchen, and Jim says he's so sorry to the widow and that Beltzmann was a great guitarist and a great guy. You want to know how great he is? He actually wiped his lips before he drank out of the hose.
Now, this is one where, do you guys know what that is? Do your friends, your adult friends come over and lap up from your hose?
When is the last time you think you've drank out of a hose?
That's probably like 8.
Yeah, I would say,
Like summer out in the backyard or something.
I guarantee you the decade would have been the 1990s.
I can't confidently say I hadn't done it in the 2010s because I moved to houses a couple of times and had hoses.
Yeah,
But-
and you were probably out there like sun tanning or something.
Like I usually do. No,
Yeah.
if I was in the garden
No,
or something,
yeah.
I might have just...
Yeah, and you did actually grow
Yeah,
a lot of
I
stuff for a
think
while.
if you're an outdoors person at all, like if you do anything outside, but that sort of thing, I could see having the hose and being like, oh, I'm thirsty. So maybe.
But here's the thing. You do it, because I think I did, and then I swore it off because it's disgusting. It tastes like hose.
Yeah,
It's nasty.
like it's hose, it's rubber or
Looks
whatever.
Yeah.
like it'd be really refreshing, like the
Yeah,
fountain in the Hercules episode that we watched that
Oh,
they
yeah.
weren't allowed to
Mhm.
drink in.
you wanted that real
It
bad.
looks so good. I think any kind of moving water just looks delicious.
This is why I would like a bird bath if I'm ever a lawn man.
No, just in your house.
That's pretty cool
Here's
too.
my bird bath.
Yeah, like what are
Like
you
a
doing with the
giant one.
center of a room anyway? Put a bird bath in there.
And that does it for my segment of According to Jim. I hope everyone out there loved it. I expect you guys to vote and rank us after we finish this episode. Be like, oh, I think Spencer did the best job. I think Brian did the best job. That sort of thing.
I also expect everyone to be caught off guard by all the twists and turns that unfold in this According to Jim episode.
I
It's
sure
pretty
hope they
nuts.
don't forget what's happened
Were
by
you
the time we
guys-
get back to it.
I sure hope they don't care.
Were you guys just fucking blown away that we had a death twist in the plot in this episode at this point? Where
Yeah,
you're like, oh
a little
my
bit.
God, this is so emotional. Beltzmann's dead.
I said those exact words.
Yeah, and what was weird is I had the IMDb page open or whatever, and I clicked over and I was like, oh, this guy's like a regular. Like, that's weird that they killed him.
Oh, and he's in episodes after this.
Huh.
I didn't actually notice that, which is what's funny. I was just like, wow, a lot of episodes.
Before we get back into the According to Jim episode, of course, and Spencer takes his turn as host, I have a little bit of a segment I wanted to bring up, and this is just because we have a special moment here. It's the 100th episode. We do special things.
This is a time for celebration.
There's only one 100th episode.
Yeah.
I would like you guys to take your minds and send them back in time. Many episodes. I don't remember how many, but many episodes.
All right,
there.
mine's gone. Yeah, my mind's gone.
Silk stockings.
Oh,
Plant your
yeah.
feet there. You're hearing about horny little box boys.
Sex.
You're counting time it takes to get from one place
Driving.
to another.
Roger
Yeah.
Bumpass. Wasn't that DJ guy's name? Roger
Bumpass.
Bumpass.
That's right. Well, that's actually a very good segue, Spencer, into this because when we met Roger Bumpass, who of course also versus Squidward on the SpongeBob show, or what was that called? SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
It's just that the SpongeBob show. It's a variety hour.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to say
wish.
that's what he's doing now.
He played a shock jock, like a radio shock jock, like an Howard Stern, who was just an asshole to people and, was shocking. Well, way back then, I had a special segment that I wanted to debut because he said the words bozo of the day. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do a bozo of the week segment where we talk about people in the world who do stupid things. I'll bring it up every couple of episodes. I had to cut it from that episode for time. We just were running very long. So I didn't end up using it at all. So instead, I think right now, we're going to do a bozo of the day.
Bozo of the day. Bozo day. Bozo of the day award.
Stupider than a cop. Boobs. Boobs. Too dumb. Boobs.
Beauty and the Bozo of the day award.
White bread, uneducated, racist, bigoted, impotent fascist like you are.
Today, I have two stories for you for our bozo of the day. One in which we will anoint our bozo of the day, and then one I just wanted to talk about because it kind of blew my mind.
Of course.
Which would you like to hear first? You guys decide.
Well, let's hear this mind blower first.
Well,
Let's lead
starting
out
with
with
the
an
top, okay.
explosion.
And it even says blows in the title.
Oh, wow.
Thar she blows. Canadian woman wins Key West conch contest. Conch? Like a conch
I think
shell?
it is conch.
I think it's
I always
conch.
thought it was, yeah.
I'll go with conch. A Canadian woman and pediatric cardiologist from Georgia won the men's and women's contests at Key West's annual conch shell blowing contest using different techniques to impress Saturday's judges. Brian Cardis of Macon, Georgia, played the Jimmy Buffett song Fins
On a conch?
on a pink-lined conch shell with holes so it can be played like a flute.
This is great.
While Carol Whiteley of Ontario, Canada, blew a long, loud blast with her shell to best other competitors.
I think you should only be able to do Jimmy Buffett stuff.
I want to go to this thing, and I don't need a judge or anything. I would.
Just hang out.
I just want to see it, yeah.
You would accept the honor, though.
if they wanted me
right.
to.
You know where it takes place? Margaritaville.
Oh, you know
Huh?
what time it takes place?
What's that?
5 o'clock somewhere.
I think that's a Toby Keith song.
Same thing. Well, in a way.
In a way,
For a different...
more hateful is Toby Keith.
Sure, for a different segment of the population.
Yes.
He's Jimmy Buffett if you hate relaxation.
Cardis said he began blowing the marine mollusk shell about 10 years ago during a family visit to Key West, adapting techniques he learned playing the trumpet as a child. You sort of have to buzz your lips when you're blowing into it, Cardis said. You have to make a pft noise with your lips in order to generate the sound in the conch shell that he's blowing into. Whiteley said she plays the shell at her Riverside home to celebrate sunsets.
That is so sweet and innocent. I love that.
What I
Every
imagine-
sunset?
Yeah.
I imagine she's curled up on her favorite recliner reading a good mystery novel.
With her
and-
big old conch.
in front of her bay window and realizes the sun is about to set. I must grab my conch.
And then seconds later, you hear
Yep.
of the conch. I don't know what a conch shell even sounds
That's
like.
how it sounds in Lord of the Flies, what you just did.
But that's satisfying.
Nailed it.
Not in Lord of the Flies, not so much satisfying as horrifying, but in this scenario.
Judges evaluated entrants ranging from children to seniors on the quality, novelty, duration, and loudness of sounds that they produced.
Loudness.
Other winners include Michael and Georgianne Wachter, a couple from Avon Lake, Ohio, who performed a conch shell and vocal duet parodying Elvis Presley's Hound Dog.
This is amazing.
It drew cheers and laughter from the spectators.
And tears. When you said
And
cheers,
beers.
that's what I thought it
It
was.
was beautiful.
Everyone cried.
The conch shell, an enduring symbol of the Florida Keys, has been used as a maritime signaling device in the region for more than 2 centuries.
Yeah, for the mermaids.
Well, what? I mean, how are they going to know you're out there to come drown you?
The island chain is nicknamed the Conch Republic.
Which, let's be honest, sounds like something George Lucas would call something.
The contest was conceived by the Old Island Restoration Foundation in 1972 and took place in the garden of Key West's oldest house museum. So a shout out to all the people who won their conch contest.
Yeah, great job.
I genuinely do like finding out about a new thing I didn't know existed that is innocent and people are passionate about. And this is one of those.
Before we reveal who the actual bozo of the day is, let's go ahead and take a break here. All right, so let's get into our bozo of the day.
Okay.
Vladimir Putin bestows Friendship Award on actor Steven Seagal.
The ultimate bozo.
Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday bestowed a state decoration on Steven Seagal, the American action movie actor who also holds Russian citizenship and, of course, is star of True Justice,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. That's probably what it was called that we covered.
I'm pretty sure that's it. The awarding of the Order of Friendship was announced on the Russian government's internet portal. The order recognizes people who have contributed to bettering international relations. Seagal was a vocal supporter of Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and last year visited the Russian-held Ukrainian town of Olenivka, where dozens of Ukrainian prisoners of war were reportedly killed in an attack for which Russia and Ukraine have blamed each other. Seagal was named in 2018 as a Russian Foreign Ministry humanitarian envoy to the United States and Japan. So he's just full-bore Russian at this point, and they're giving him an award, which is called, what, the Friendship Award? What
Yeah.
kind of name is that?
Like Vladimir Putin's Fascist Buddy Award.
So there you go. That's our bozo of the day. I hope you
And
guys
he
enjoyed
really
it.
deserves it, and he does have a rich history with us between covering him for the podcast and then, of course, watching a lot of Seagal movies in amazement when
He
we
got
were younger.
a whole day of the week
All
devoted to
Sundays.
him. Yeah.
That's right. Go check out those True Justice episodes. They're probably around 70-ish.
Sure.
Episode 70 or
yeah,
so.
we had a lot of fun doing them. And, like, that is another thing. I don't think you want Seagal as an ambassador because that involves speech, and he's not great at that.
Yeah,
Not
you
good at
know, he
much
just kind
anymore.
of knows everyone.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, I know people saying what we're doing is real bad, but, like, some of it might be good.
So what is it with you and this guy? He sells herbs. How's he gonna help us?
Because he also knows everybody around here. And if you were able to read any of the toxicology reports, there's some funny stuff going on that may have to do with herbs. Not only is a herbologist, but he just really has a lot of resources. He hears everything. Great guy to know. And like I said, he knows everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, bozo of the day and Presidential Russian Friendship Award winner, Steven Seagal.
And clearly accomplished thespian.
Well, that's it for my hosting duties here. I'm going to pass it over to Spencer as we get back into According to Jim. I know you guys can't wait, right?
Yeah, I was tired of hearing about something more entertaining.
Like conch shells.
That
Yeah.
conch shell thing was amazing. Yeah, it made my day. So we get to pick up in the meat of the episode now, I guess, if you want to think of it that way.
Meat's a good word for
We
what you
don't.
see in this episode.
There's a
And
lot
Jim
of meat
loves
in
it.
here. There's of course, there's no secondary plot for us to wrestle with, I guess. Like, since I get the history of the April Fool's Day is kind of lingering in the back, but all we have here is Jim doing his thing and Beltzmann dies. And that's where we're at in the episode. We're meeting Beltzmann's widow, Bonnie, who I think is just a real bitch.
She's also taller than every other
She's
cast
big.
member.
She's got to be like
She's real big.
6'2" or
I don't know where Beltzmann got her.
We got her. He collected her at the claw machine at the mall.
That's something that would happen in an According to Jim episode. Bonnie is having the interaction with Jim where Van left off here. And despite, in general, coming across as really deadpan and kind of dead-eyed emotionally in this scene, she does really seem to want to give Jim a picture of the band, which was their only paying gig. Here's how it sounds, though, when she says it.
I want to show you something. I was going through his stuff and I found this picture of the band from the one paying gig you guys had.
I got to be honest, it took me a little bit to figure out, because at first I thought she said a pan gig, and then it sounded like a pain gig,
Well,
like they were in pain when they did it.
I could see a scenario where that group of guys is like, oh, we forgot our instruments, let's play pans.
You hear any of that pan gig you guys did?
Well, and if we'd started at the beginning with the new band, they could be the Green Man group.
So that was their one paying gig that they had, and I guess this was kind of nice of her. She really wanted Jim to have that picture. In the process of Jim thanking Bonnie for this, they get into a real big hug. Just the tightest, hardest hug of two people who don't really know each other you can imagine.
Big Jim hug.
Deep grip.
Yeah, I mean, Jim's really got her. He's really got her in his claws. It's during this time that he actually notices behind her on the mantle is the Ernie Banks rookie card that he's been wondering what became of it. Well, there it is. So his reaction upon seeing the card is actually to increase his intensity on the hug, which Bonnie puts up with kind of gamely, I thought.
I think maybe his id is saying, if I squeeze this woman hard enough, her head will pop off and I will rightfully take the card and reclaim what is mine.
She puts up with this until he can't keep up the charade anymore, and then he just tosses her aside and races towards the mantle to snatch up the card and say, "This is an Ernie Banks rookie card. Where did it come from? Where did Beltzmann get this?" She says, "He just got it a few days ago. He said he could die happy now." There's an awkward pause, and she shows her comedic chops.
Because he died, Spencer.
Yeah, he's dead. Beltzmann's dead.
Again, Bonnie being ignorant of the idea. I mean, and we'll find out why or whatever later, but Bonnie being ignorant of the idea that the card might have been expensive, too. Like, oh, he just brought this thing home the other day.
It's in the middle of this that Cheryl rushes back in the room, a big hunk of her famous broccoli casserole, and offers it to Bonnie.
The full name for it is actually Cheryl's open air cheese broccoli casserole.
It does look just vile in the scene, too.
And I fucking love broccoli, but I
like broccoli,
I don't know about
I
this.
don't know if I want this way either. So Bonnie is living right up to her reputation immediately upon getting handed this disgusting bit of broccoli casserole. Looks at it, stares at it a little bit, says, look at all that cheese. Yeah, wow. And both women are just awkwardly staring at the food that Bonnie has not accepted yet before she says, "Oh, you trying to kill me too?" And then just storms off back to the kitchen without taking the food.
She's a grieving widow.
The suggestion there too, though, is that she killed Beltzmann, is that Cheryl killed Beltzmann.
And not the first one, because earlier she implied that donut band tray might have contributed to his death.
Yeah, Bonnie seems to, for some reason, hate Cheryl. At this point, she doesn't like Cheryl, and we learn later this isn't the case, but it seems that she likes Jim just fine at this point, based on the hug and giving him the picture. But overall, I don't like Bonnie in this scene at all. I know she is supposedly grieving, but it doesn't explain all of her kind of deadpan emotion stuff and just kind of in general being rude and standoffish to everyone.
I think what it is too is it's the presentation of a very one note character. I feel like this is probably what Bonnie always is in the show, like a person who would buy one of those shirts that said like, "I only speak sarcasm" or whatever.
She is supposed to be very dry, and the person playing her just not enough there. And the lines, it's not just anyone's fault. It's everyone's fault.
But let's just lay down the blame right now. The writing staff, Bonnie herself,
Jim.
Sure.
Why not?
It's his fault this thing exists.
Too. Beltzmann did something, I'm sure.
We could be covering any number of better shows, but nope, he made this one.
So now with Bonnie having run away in a huff, it's Cheryl, Dana, and Andy and Jim alone in the room. By the way, Dana and Andy are on the couch, and they don't have a problem with the broccoli casserole. They are scarfing the shit out of that. So it's at this point that Jim bemoans the obvious fact that before he died, his good friend Beltzmann stole the Ernie Banks rookie card and then had his fatal heart attack. Cheryl's not convinced that the card's even his because, again, women don't know anything about baseball, and they're like, there's probably all sorts of Ernie Banks rookie cards. Everyone's got one.
And they don't understand that there's
anything.
malice in the world. Like, everything is good. No one would do anything horrible, even though your husband's a piece of fucking shit.
Yeah, none of these guys seem cool.
Jim has a very specific list of reasons how he knows, no, this is my card.
All this is legit, too. Like the kind of stuff that you'd see in like the Beckett metric rubric for grading cards or whatever. And I tried to zoom in and look, and I think this might have been like an 8, which is like near mint or something like that. These cards have sold, Ernie Banks rookie cards, in similar conditions, if I'm right about that, A lot of them have sold for like $1,000 to $3,000 that are a little lower, but 8 or better has sold for $8,000 to $20,000.
Damn.
So this Beckett list, does it sound anything like the list of qualities? Does it sound anything like this?
It is my card. Look at this. Flawless corners, perfectly centered, no color bleeding. And look, you see that little nick right there? This is mine, Cheryl. This is mine. That freaky little gnome stole my card.
Like he was reading straight off the requirements when you get your card graded by Beckett.
I got to tell you what, out of context, if I didn't just watch this, I'd be like, what cartoon is that from? Just the way Jim Belushi reads his lines, it's so
he's
over
all
the top.
worked up and just, he sounds so dumb.
He does have, because he arguably is from the area or whatever, the Chicago bit.
Yeah.
Particularly at the end, he's my card. He has a little bit of that coming out.
There's at this point that Andy throws his plate at Dana in the middle of this, gets up and has a direct conversation with God, who he calls Pop, and says, you know, when you see that creep up there, Pop, can you give him the old Alabama soup bone as punishment for his theft?
I think he means his dead dad.
I didn't
That
know.
would be my guess.
Yeah, he's like calling up to heaven. He's like, Pops,
Go get
you're already dead
Beltzmann.
from being just like me, presumably.
See, I actually thought that's his relationship with God.
I
It's
hope
Pop,
that's right.
Big guy upstairs,
Calling him Pops.
Either way, I like the image of either Beltzman's
Or God.
dead dad or God being a wrestler who does something called the Alabama soup bone.
Do you think that was his finisher or like a trademark?
Like a trademark.
Okay.
That
So it's
sets
not a
up
real
the finisher,
thing?
which is the Dr. Bomb.
There's
Not that
no
I know.
Alabama soup bone.
Dr. Bomb. I don't think there is. Brian?
No, I don't think
Okay,
so.
I don't think.
It sounds like the kind of thing Jim Ross would say just about punching a guy.
Yeah, it's
Like he's laying Alabama soup
right
bones
his chops.
right in the kisser. Think of your family.
It actually does make a lot more sense. I'm sure it is his dad.
No, we're
when
going with God. Let's stick with that.
I love the idea of asking God to do a wrestling move on
Are
someone.
we to say they are not one and the same?
Sure.
God
Yeah.
created Andy. He's everyone's dad.
On the 7th day.
God created Andy,
Ew.
and it's his fat red.
And that's
Ugh.
when he was done after that.
Yeah,
He was like,
wow.
all right, cool, I'm going to rest now.
On the
No, I think it's more like, oh God, I'm out. I can't do anything good.
Yeah, and he
Oh
exclaimed
God, I'm
to
out. He said his own
himself.
name.
Takes his own name.
Okay, here's my thing I want to ask about the scene. As Andy stands up, he flings the plate to the ground, food on it, and it just bangs around on the floor.
Yeah.
No one acknowledges
Or
it.
cleans it up.
Do you think that was in the script? Or because otherwise they might like, what are you doing, Andy?
Well, the other thing about it is that I hope it was in the script because the plate by then was almost fully eaten, like everything on the plate. What maybe Andy's that in character. Maybe he's a real Daniel Day-Lewis of the network sitcom circuit.
This is a whole subtext thing now that I want to think about for a little while with Andy and his
God.
relationship with God or his dad. Or his dad.
We don't really know. Andy has yet to explain his belief system to us.
Well, that happened in the first 3 seasons or whatever.
Yeah, we missed it.
It's at this moment that Andy's theatrics are put aside. Jim says, you know what? Fuck this. I'm putting a stop to this right now. I'm going to march on in there. I'm going to tell Bonnie Beltzmann's a piece of shit. He stole my rookie card before he died. Cheryl says, no, you can't do that. Imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and it was your funeral and people were coming up to me and they were saying, what a piece of shit you were, Jim. Dana gets her little line in here like, it'd be a lot of people that would do that or whatever,
No
whatever
one
her
likes you,
joke
Jim.
is.
Which is the show's joke, but it also asks you to like Jim, which doesn't work.
Oh, guys, this is too funny. This is too much fun we're having.
The Alabama soup bone was pretty fun.
My gut is almost busted.
You are on the edge of your seat, my friend. You can scoot back. There's
I
plenty of
almost
chairs.
slapped my fucking kneecap off.
I can't handle this much unrepentant comedy. It's too funny. And as we know, whenever we have moments that require a change in emotion, I like to lighten the mood. But the mood does not need lightening right now.
Thicken it up.
It needs darkening, which is why I'm going to play this clip for you.
No, Mama. There's no hope for him now, Travis. He's suffering. You know we've got to do it.
I know, Mama. He was my dog. I'll do it.
went on this long.
Snarling now. I feel back to even now.
Yeah, we're.
I actually thought at
better.
first the mom was the one snarling. And he was like, no, mama.
You're gonna have to put me down when I turn into a werewolf.
A werewolf.
I feel like we can get back to according to Jim now.
Was
I've got
that-
room for more comedy. in
Was
me.
that Old Yeller? Was
Yeah.
that the famous?
Yeah, that was Old Yeller.
I didn't
The
know
best-
Old Yeller snarled for 30 minutes before they shot him.
It's the best. Yeah, he's like tied to a post or something, isn't
He's
he?
in a cage.
It's like the best comedic use you just made of Old Yeller since Kids in the Hall.
So Cheryl shut down the idea. Dana's on board with Cheryl. She says, yeah, the card's not going to go anywhere. You've got plenty of time to figure this out later. Don't confront the grieving widow during the funeral about her husband's horrible theft.
And Jim doesn't. Everything's wonderful from here on out.
Yeah, that's the end of the episode, actually. He's fine with it, and
That'd be
we're
fine.
good.
Jim may fly off the handle at first, but he can always be talked
He
back
can
to
be
reason.
reined in, yes. The women know how to calm him down. Andy drops his plate again and says, you know what the real problem here is? How are we going to find a replacement guitar player who also hands out porn on Christmas?
Okay, I have some questions about this one too. I was really taken aback by a few things. That seems very like an intimate, strange thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Christmas, yeah.
It took me a little bit to realize also that this would have been a time when you could hand out porn.
Well, yeah, and they bury him with a magazine, as
Jugs.
we find out
Yeah,
later.
Jugs
Jugs.
magazine,
So
yeah.
I guess physical media was important at this
Yeah.
time.
Have you ever had a friend, though, that would give you porn for
Nope.
Christmas?
Nope.
That's creepy.
I've had a friend that
No.
give me porn at all.
I can't
I
imagine
don't
it.
You guys suck
this
as friends.
generation, I don't think we need to anymore. You
No.
just be like, here's a website, go to that.
Yeah, I do think the idea is really funny of, though, your friends just casually being like, here's Jugs XXX. Merry Christmas. Look at these boobs.
You're going to love this. I was jerking it to it just a little bit ago. Now you try.
There's 2 pages totally stuck together.
I just read the articles.
Yeah, there's a real good one in there about how to enhance your confidence.
So we cut to the funeral.
Great.
One of the guests who we talked about earlier from the band, John, tells Jim he needs to rub Beltzman's head for good luck.
What you do with corpses.
You just go and rub all their heads.
Do you think there's you have to do it a number of times, or it's just, rub however you wish?
Hell, you feel weird about it.
Oh.
This is a weird response from Jim, right? Because he actually is like, what? You're fucking weird. I would never do something so inappropriate. But Jim's character would be all about that, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think he'd rub the shit out of Beltzman's dead head.
He rubs the shit out of Beltzmann soon.
John says, trust me, it works. I've been rubbing corpse heads and my life's really taken off.
Ever since I started, everything's really turned around for me.
Is that a thing you want to have said out loud to other humans?
I guess John does. And this is the ripped guy, right? From the band.
Well,
So
ripped is.
Well,
but yes.
they're like, he's in the prime of his life. And he yelled at Beltzmann for eating bullshit. And then he's talking about how he goes to funerals rubbing people's heads. It's like, he doesn't need to be judging anyone. Piece of shit.
No, this is a very strange character beat to be hitting.
So the group approaches the casket together. It's an open casket, I should add. And Jim immediately spots the baseball card carefully positioned on the corpse, along with the bucket of fried chicken and the Jugs magazine we were talking about. So Dana gets a little joke here about how Beltzman's going out like a pharaoh.
It's pretty good.
It wasn't bad.
This is my second one that I went, okay, I like this.
Not
it made
bad.
me chuckle.
She even read it with a little flair, like going
She
out
did.
like a pharaoh or something like that.
Almost impressed by him.
Like Ramses the second.
Yep, sure.
Did you know the Greeks referred to him as Ozymandias?
Oh,
I had
really?
heard that. I couldn't have remembered that. But when you said it, it was
Watched
like,
a video
that's
about
true.
Ramses too the other night.
Why?
I've been watching historical videos for some reason. Let me tell you about Woodrow Wilson and Grover Cleveland. I've done a lot of these things.
What do you got on King Tut?
Pharaoh.
Haven't looked into him
He's
yet.
a boy king.
Boy King died young, buried slaves with himself.
If he was still alive, we could have had him on the podcast because of the boy thing, and we're called Boob Tube Boys.
Yeah.
It would have kind of fit in. I'm sure King Tut would have loved to talk about, according to Jim.
My favorite thing about King Tut, because we all had to learn about him in school. And
He was the
you
biggest
think
deal that
it's
isn't.
a big deal, and yeah, when you discover like his legacy or whatever, it's like, hey, really wasn't. He wasn't a big fucking deal.
Wait,
like no
what
one
did
cares.
what could you have taught me about that you put King Tut in there instead.
Well, I guess he was like sickly too, so
Yeah.
he didn't accomplish shit.
The only thing about it is that it was a recent discovery that was real cool, and everyone was excited about it.
Yeah, and that's what it was. Is like, let's put something hip and modern and irrelevant in the history books now.
This guy named Howard Carter in the 20s, he's just found this fresh pharaoh corpse of a kid.
You really... Howard Carter.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think that was his name.
I am impressed.
I think when Spencer said that, it like really rang. Because I very much like Spencer. What I really remember about it is like elementary school or whatever teachings of it. And for a long time, I was getting King Tut confused as a possible myth when I was a kid. Because it blended in with a lot of... It sounded like it, right?
I guess.
Pyramids, Boy King...
Funny, though, how boring he was. As a historical figure, he really didn't make a big difference at all.
Like King Dud.
Or you can make a dog movie called King Mutt. And the dog has a little pharaoh hat on.
I'm interested.
I'm listening. Keep that in mind for something later.
Okay.
So Beltzmann's going out like a pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim wants to take the baseball card. And Cheryl says no.
We're at a funeral. Don't do that.
I mean, what are you going to do here? You're surely going to just let it lie there.
It's kind of too late. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it at this point. And that's, of course, what Jim thinks, and the episode ends. So Bonnie joins them in the middle of their little talk about whether or not they can take the baseball card, makes a glum remark about how they had to cut the back out of Beltman's suit so his fat ass could fit into it.
So fat.
And this is a guy who, if he like jogged for a few months, he'd be fine.
If he ate better for a bit and
just don't eat the chicken cheese fries thing or whatever he had. Jim mentions the Ernie Banks card, and Bonnie says, hey, I think that's how he'd want it. Jim actually gets really emotional here. It's relatively convincing. He chokes out a pleading question. Don't you think a living, breathing Cubs fan would appreciate it more?
Like Chris Barboa.
Let's give it to him. And Andy plays along really nice, like a good wingman, a good funeral baseball card.
Bloated
acquiring
wingman.
Yeah.
Wings man.
You know what, guys? Don't bury me with anything. Keep it. Sell it.
Yeah,
I'm
do
dead.
whatever
I don't
you
need
want.
No,
that.
it's a stupid concept.
My corpse, in the most literal way possible, has no needs.
This is like when they buried King Tut with all his riches
Right.
and his slaves.
And then Howard Carter found him in the 20s.
It all comes back to Tut and Carter, man. I've been saying
Sounds like a law firm.
Tut and Carter.
Tut and Carter.
Attorneys at law, neither of them with any knowledge of the law or modern times.
Or they'll write their dissension in hieroglyphics.
So Andy's playing along real well with Jim, and Jim's saying, Andy, you're so heartless and stupid. I would never want the card. That's not what I meant when I said that. And Bonnie just says, I did think about that, Jim, but I really don't care much for you, so you're not going to get the card.
Fair enough.
Pharaoh enough.
Yeah. This is.
Remember how there was a Pharaoh line earlier?
I certainly do. I think this is the most realistic thing about this show is where she says, I don't like you, Jim
It's
Belushi.
not very consistent, though, because she was being nice to him earlier. But you're correct. It's fair that she was like, yeah, I don't want you to have the card. So at this point, I don't get this joke, but now we transition to Andy hitting on Bonnie for the rest of this little scene.
Really abrupt plot development that also stops soon, but it's disgusting.
Well, I guess this is a recurring thing in the show is that he tries to be a ladies' man because Jim is a ladies' man.
Oh,
by the way.
Okay,
obviously,
I didn't know that.
Andy doesn't always work out.
I see.
Not always. Sometimes he gets that dick wet, but
so
it's funny. Nothing about either one of those guys was screaming ladies' man to me. Jim either.
So what do you think about Bonnie's cut down line to Andy, which is, I think I've dated my last guy with a heart attack physique. Not bad.
This was the other one that got a little chuckle out of me. There's a couple, but mostly this show is actively unfunny. Like it's trying to be bland.
That's true.
Andy's the kind of guy who, like, he's gotten in trouble, so he's not allowed within 5 miles of a school.
Right.
But then also will get online to be like, trans people just want to touch our kids in the bathroom.
Right.
That's the kind of person Andy is.
And his truck has so many bumper stickers on.
And it's a truck.
Yeah.
Because also he probably couldn't fit in much else.
But it's like a new truck somehow.
Jim and Andy started a family construction business or something, and it's very successful.
It's called Jim Belushi and the Regulators or whatever. No, that's Warren G. Sorry. Wrong guy.
Easy thing to mix up there.
Oh, it's Jim Belushi and the E Street Band. That's what it is.
Yeah. That rings a little truer. Clarence Clemens, We love talking about Clarence Clemens
That's
here.
the trumpet guy you guys bring up.
that
right?
was
Trumpet
saxophone guy.
So whatever.
That
It's
is
the
weird
thing
that came up again.
Squeeze and blow into like a conch.
Yeah.
Well, this has happened multiple times because Van won't stop talking about the E Street Band.
It's time for the service. And you know who is doing the service is Reverend Charles C. Stevens. That's his name in the show and his actual name. Reverend Charles C. Stevens. He begins the service. He mentions Beltzmann's first name, which is Eugene, and it's very funny.
Funniest name, right?
Jim and Andy. I actually think that could have been funny. The reveal of his first name being something that distracts them from the funeral service and they're laughing about it.
If it were
Eugene. Executed better.
Let's talk about, there's a real life example, which is the Kramer reveal, the Cosmo Kramer, and that was very funny. And every time I watch it, I still laugh because of how the cast is playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like this sense of shock and awe.
And absurdity.
Yeah.
If they were like, Beltzmann died, thunderclap Beltzmann. Okay, you got me. That's pretty cool and funny.
Also, wow, took you 1 second to beat the writing staff, according to Jim.
My favorite part about the Kramer name reveal is how much the other actors are genuinely hilarious. Like
Julie Louis-Dreyfus in that scene is
the
incredible.
way she busts out with Cosmo and can't help but laugh it's so infectious.
It is.
Like you can't watch that scene and not get a dumb smile on your
You
face.
will feel that she is your best friend in that moment.
So Jim can't pay attention to any of Reverend Charles C. Stevens' service because he's focused on the Ernie Banks card. And he learns through the beginning of the service where the Reverend kind of talks about what's going to happen in the coming days. The Beltzmann's going to be cremated. His ashes are going to be spread. And I guess he's assuming that all of the fried chicken and the card, it's all getting burned up with Beltzmann. So there's not going to be any physical remnants of the card pretty soon.
That means this funeral smells like fried chicken. I don't know if that's a positive or a
That's
negative.
how Beltzmann would
It
want
beats embalming fluid, I guess.
Yeah, that clean.
Would you be able to eat chicken that never touched a corpse, but was a prepared corpse like Beltzmann, but was sitting that close to the corpse?
No.
You're asking if I was at this funeral and
If
at
you'd
the
want
end of
the
it, they're like,
chicken
anybody want to have
afterwards.
some I'd have at it.
I wouldn't.
Doesn't bother me.
They couldn't do it.
If he was touching him, maybe not.
I don't think I could do it either, and I thought about it.
The
for a
bucket
long
was
time.
there, so that's close enough.
The mental picture, I think, would get me.
See,
But
I can blank spot that.
We got to get this to really happen to know. So
True.
we need to find a corpse, put some chicken in there.
Or one of us needs to die and then put some chicken.
Well, we have to do the podcast. It has to be someone else.
Well, necromancy. Then we come
Oh,
back and do
yeah.
the podcast again.
That's true.
Necromancy solves
Touche.
a lot. So Jim knows he needs to interrupt the service. He does this by approaching the Reverend and says, look, I know Beltzmann a hell of a lot better than you. Get the fuck out of here. Reverend Charles C. Stevens, he says, I baptized him and I knew him for 45 years.
And his first name.
That was when Reverend Charles C. Stevens was only 90.
Jim kind of says, okay, fine, fair enough. You probably know him better, but I'll just be your opening act. So you go ahead and sit down and I got some stuff I want to say.
Well, let's be honest. Jim Belushi is no headliner. He can opening act for somebody, sure, fine, but not headlining.
Not in an arena, not in a club, and certainly not even at a funeral.
So he awkwardly begins whatever his plan is here, and we don't know. We're working along with Jim in his brain. This is improv for him, how he's getting the card back, and he's saying, I'm going to lead everyone in prayer. So everyone bow your heads, close your eyes, don't look up for a while I do this little prayer I'm going to do.
Which is why when people say that to me, I don't look up for a while. I keep my head down. I listen.
Mm-hmm. Especially if it's Jim Belushi.
I always open my eyes in prayers as a kid.
Do you remember
bad.
Thumbs Up, 7-Up?
Oh, yeah.
I always peed.
Did you look at the shoes?
Always.
And then you could tell who touched your thumb or whatever when you look at their shoes up there. They're like, it was you. And they're like, how'd you always get it right?
They're
I
like,
don't know.
Man, Van's smart. They call me Van. And I won all the time at Heads Up 7-Up, which is why I majored in it in college.
It's a really transferable skill for podcasting,
Yes.
too. Heads Up 7-Up. Do you think, is that a thing kids still do at all?
I don't think. Maybe.
Surely kids have
Why
evolved to
not?
things that are not that.
I don't know. What else are they going to play?
I don't know, like
Pokemon.
Dark Souls?
For some reason, the first thing that came to mind was Tetris.
Tetris,
Yeah.
Pokemon,
They
Dark
had
Souls.
Tetris,
Nailed
though,
it.
when we were...
Yeah, I played it then. Yeah,
we had our
exactly.
little Game Boys. All of us had our Tetris Game Boys, and we did not play that. We played Heads Up 7-Up anyway, so I feel like they
Yeah.
still do.
One time, something Kendall and I did in high school is we got Edwin Becker's copy of Pokemon, and we got him to Cinnabar Island, which is late in the game, and released all of his Pokemon except for a Magikarp. And so effectively he was trapped on Cinnabar
Well, that's
Island.
me.
He couldn't play the
man.
rest of the game. Yeah.
Real
Edwin
mean.
Becker sucked. Honestly, if I met Edwin Becker today, I'd be like, Edwin Becker, this is great. Let's chat. I think he's all right. Back then, I did not like Edwin Becker.
You don't know that either. He may still be horrible.
So Jim's prayer, I actually wrote down the start of it here because it's really dumb, and I want to actually see if I can recapture that dumbness. My dearly beloved, by the power vested in me, I'm going to send Beltzmann up to the sky. That's what he actually says. That's his prayer.
A pilot could say that.
You did it better.
And then he starts working on getting the card loose while he's talking. There was a part that wasn't terrible where he screams at Beltzmann, let go, and then he puts that in the prayer like it's hard to let go of Beltzmann. And that's not the worst thing that happened.
This
in
is
the
a
episode.
real pry from your cold dead hand scenario too.
I like that he has such a grip on it.
Yeah, I
That's
do
one
too.
thing
I
I
guess
did
he
like.
would. Maybe if it gone into rigor mortis after they gave him the Ernie Banks card. I don't know. I don't know how hard that grip would be. I don't know how realistic the scene is, but
How soon do you place a man's baseball card collection in his hands
when
after
he's
he
still
dies?
warm, he's got to still be warm. You got to give it to him right away. This whole gag right before my little scene here, and I pass it on to Brian, is that he can't get the cards from Beltzmann's dead grip. So
Can't do it.
his struggle actually knocks it entirely out of Beltzmann's hands and onto the floor of the casket near the corpse's feet. So it's no longer within reach at this point. Oh, no.
Is this a casket or a coffin?
I think it's a casket.
Okay.
Looks like a casket.
We are the people to answer this because we have covered a show called Casket Men.
I think.
What was that
Yep.
called?
Casketeers.
So, by the way, the studio audience just fucking loves this little physical comedy that's happening right now with Jim. They are losing their shit. And Jim, he realizes, well, I'm not going to be able to do this by myself. And now he needs Andy to come up and give him some emotional support. As he tells the crowd, I'm overcome with emotion and I need help from my big fat dumb friend Andy.
And it's been at this point 20, 30 minutes or so. Everyone's eyes still closed.
With my portion, thank God, over of according to Jim, we're going to transition to a little something different now.
Hey, it's me, Brian. I'm on the Boob Tube Boys also, and we're going to do something we've never really done here before, but it seems appropriate.
Wakeboarding.
I don't know how you understood that or how we'll translate it to an audio medium.
You'll hear the sounds of water.
Yeah, and it'll be calming and extreme. So people listen to this podcast.
Surprisingly, they
Yeah,
do.
They do. And some of them have questions. So I present to you guys a new segment called Listener Questions Centurion Edition. Because we've done 100 of these. I reached out primarily to BTB media advisor and superfan Johnny Radical to find out what burning questions all those tubers out there might have for us. More accurately, also, like what questions he specifically has.
And all the other ones, too, that you asked.
Yeah,
You
and
have
all the
so
other
many
ones. But I really feel like his base questions here hit on the kind of stuff people might talk about when reaching a milestone. Let's talk about some of these questions. We're going to start out with kind of the more broad questions. What were each of our favorite and least favorite shows we've covered so far?
90 Day Fiancé.
It's got to be the worst.
I think it was the most reprehensible show, and somehow more than Duck Dynasty because it was longer.
Yeah.
That one was like 4 hours.
Well, Duck Dynasty was a half hour, so that was at least easier to get through, though I hosted both of those shows you mentioned, and they both sucked.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
didn't pick Duck Dynasty, though.
Let's not
You had
remind
that
him about that.
Foisted on you.
Are there other shows outside of those two, though, you might answer the most hated to?
I think you're going to feel similarly. I thought Andromeda would be fun, and it wasn't.
You
it was
stole
so
that
stupid.
one. I was going to say that too because I don't know if it's partially because I had high hopes for it being,
I think it was that.
Yeah, really goofy, but it was just kind of not.
I'll do another one, and this is all on Van, but coincidence. True Justice. I thought that would actually be better than it was. And
I
wait, you
really
didn't,
thought it
enjoyed
was
that.
fantastic.
Yeah.
hold on. You didn't pick that one either. That
No,
was,
I
that
did
was
that.
picked for you. No, I actually thought that was disappointing in the sense that we heard the clip that Seagal did, and that represented all of his lines from that show. It didn't really have any signature Seagal moments at all. That show made me fall asleep.
That was going to be one of my surprise bests.
Oh, wow.
Was that one,
There was
actually.
really nothing there that I like about any of the Seagal stuff that he's
Mhm.
ever done. I didn't see any of that.
I'll offer up another bad one, which actually I think our episodes turned out well, was The Waltons. Like that show.
I
itself
agree. I
was
think
awful.
our episodes turned out really well on that. Also, I kind of expected some sort of depth to emerge from that show because it is kind of historical in a sense, but
Nope.
it really was slice of I guess what passes for life.
Now that we're not doing that show anymore, I'm less mad about it. I don't mind having done that show.
But that
in
kind of is
hindsight.
how it is when you're doing it, when you're the one hosting it. Sometimes one of the things you're doing, it's just like, okay, well, I don't like this at all,
Yeah.
especially because I've had to research it and explicitly talk about it.
I did notice that both of those Waltons episodes are close to 2 hours.
Mhm.
They were long.
It's kind of unavoidable. In talking about best shows we've covered, obviously Seinfeld and The Simpsons. But beyond that, do you guys have any that you think are like the best shows we've covered? And this can be like your favorite or just critically, either way.
Well, I wouldn't be critically, but without getting too involved in the characters being that we had one in each of them, Knight Rider is special to me because we had two straight
Yes.
episodes where we were dying laughing at a character in the episode.
Power Rangers stands out to me as one that not only was fun to watch just at home and take notes or whatever, but our recording I thought was great too. So that was definitely one that surprised me. Now, will I watch more Power Rangers? Maybe. I'll watch a couple and laugh about it, but that's not a show I'm ever going to be
No.
like, I'm going to watch all 700 seasons of it.
I would kind of like to see Pudgy Pig.
It's great.
Like, I loved watching The Mary Tyler Moore Show. I've obviously seen it before. But beyond that, I want to specifically shout out my experience. And this may just be more our episodes, but I did have fun watching these. But Babylon 5, I really enjoyed. And I think our episodes were really fun and had a good energy to them as well. So I have some fondness for that. And some of the other goofy shows that aren't actually my favorites. Kind of like Spencer said about Knight Rider. I have a very soft spot for. Silk Stockings is one of them. That we
Magnum
mentioned
PI,
earlier.
Renegade.
Yeah.
Like those are all fun.
Yes, of course, Walker. All right, so we've covered the basics there. We've kind of talked about this a little bit. Do you guys have any favorite or least favorite episodes of doing this? Or do you know?
Like our specific recorded episodes?
I, for instance, for whatever the reason, when I was doing Matlock, I don't think I've listened to those really yet or anything because I just felt I was struggling hosting that thing.
That is, I guess, a good opportunity for me to state that my personal standpoint of being involved in the show is that I don't think I'm going to be able to listen to them for quite some time while I've got some distance from them because I think I would be too hard on myself and hate everything that we've done, even unfairly.
Sure.
So I need personally enough distance from them before I can come back someday and listen to all of this.
House to me was a show that I liked. Of course, I enjoyed watching House. When we recorded the episodes, I don't think they're bad per se, but something had run out of time or something or other. I think we had to end up recording a different way or something or other.
And early on, we were recording like a lot.
Oh, yeah. Because we were releasing 2 episodes a week, and I
there
was
was
doing
a lot,
that.
part of that time period. I don't remember that
Mhm.
clearly. Some of the shows, if I heard it, I'd be like, "That happened." I don't.
Yeah.
We did
Absolutely
so much work for a little while there.
It was a really weird time in my life. I had just moved back to Missouri too. That whole time period of my life is a weird depression haze.
Like a depression whirlwind.
Yeah, and like the one really cool part about it was doing this and getting this started because now I look back and I'm like, oh, we were doing a fun podcast at least during that. And all of the memories that I have of doing this are positive.
I was looking at some of our release dates on various episodes we covered and being like, oh, we did that show in February of that year. Like it just nothing stuck with me in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like it was that time of year we talked about Knight Rider, stuff like that.
Well, I just said True Justice was like episode 70. It's like 50.
Yeah,
it was
but
way
it doesn't seem that long
Mhm.
ago. We're going to look up and be like, our 500th episode before long. So we've kind of covered that. What's a show that we've covered before that you guys might want to revisit or record more episodes on?
Renegade.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Columbo, since
Columbo,
we were brand new, and I mean, I didn't even really have notes for that as a host, and we didn't have the equipment yet. So if someone was like, "Hey, what should I listen to?" I would not want to steer them toward those episodes at all.
Very similarly, I think Columbo would be up there for me too, just because I love that show. And I don't think there's anything wrong with how we handled the episode, but it was earlier on. Like we were learning our
finding
footing.
ourselves.
That was also the first hour-long show that we ever covered.
It was our 3rd show.
Yeah.
So
So
that 4th, Mad About You.
That's one. And I had another one. This is not because I think we picked a bad episode or did a bad job. I wish we had an episode of Xena with Xena in it more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's one. There are a few shows like that where we didn't get a main character,
Or
very
like
much.
ER with George Clooney. We
Yeah.
want to see more of him.
So, like, again, nothing against the episodes we covered, but I think it'd be fun to revisit the show to see another element of what really made it stand out.
I think we could even possibly pull it off with a whole segment of kind of us taking a
Sure.
a look back on something we did in a more clear way or something.
Definitely, because I
Mhm.
mean, as we do hundreds and hundreds more of these, we're going to need
Well,
little
we're
branches
so-
to climb out on.
And we're so good now too. It's just
Yeah.
so smooth and professional.
This is so polished. Spencer, do your catchherpse.
Ugh.
See?
I forgot how it was.
Came out like water from a fountain that centaurs might be drinking from in Hercules: The Legendary Journey.
I'd also like to say that very first episode we did, Mad About You, was really good.
It is.
It was. That was. We've learned
It's our
a
test
lot.
episode.
We've learned a lot over the years now, but that we did have a certain element that was there right away, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool to look back on too, to be like, you know, if there's ever a time to toot our own horn, it's now. But to look back on the first one and be like, hey, you know what? We kind of know what we're doing.
And that's available on Patreon.
Yeah.
Still out there for anyone. You don't have to subscribe.
It's free.
All that stuff's there for free. Check it out. Subscribe if you like us, that sort of thing. Renegade I just blurted it out at the beginning, but that was a show that is so absurd and
Yeah.
fun. I really want to revisit it. And then, honestly, it's a show we've already revisited. I will go back to it any day of the week. Bones.
I'm telling you right now, next, if no one else does it, I'm taking another Bones
Christmas
episode
one.
this Christmas.
Because Bones is so competently done that it looks easy enough to watch, but is still at the same time so absurd and stupid that we have so much fun doing it.
And we need an episode with Seeley's dad.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we
Ralph
do.
Waite. We need to see him in that show.
Daddy Walton.
I'll tell you what else. The Christmas episode of Bones we just did in 2022 that I hosted is as much fun as I've ever had hosting an episode. I felt like there was always something we were all pretty engaged with, given, let's say, the undelicate plot of the episode.
Where it ends with them smelling Santa butts.
Exactly. I think you just saying that sentence actually explains the whole thing pretty well.
That's also the tagline
Yeah.
for that episode.
Yeah. Another listener question. Were there any episodes that you guys found like hard to watch or hard to record
Ooh.
for any reasons that we didn't talk about on the podcast? Like any
Oh,
behind the scenes reasons?
I was pretty vocal in that I was struggling with the Waltons, so no, it wasn't really too behind the scenes. But that came to mind, and so did, of course, 21 Jump Street, which, we did cover that, though. But that was brutal in so many ways. Subject matter.
Mission Impossible, I remember being difficult to get through because of how complicated it was. I still enjoyed the show.
That
and
second
our
episode was so
It was
nuts.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so much plotting.
That stands out to me. And then you mentioned Andromeda earlier, for both of you did,
Ooh,
for
yeah,
a
that's a
show
good
that
one.
you were sad it wasn't as good as it could be. It was so boring
Yeah.
and really had Sorbo at his Sorboiest, and which was just awful to
Would you
deal
say
with.
it is Sorborius?
So I've got a sore boner for that.
For me, ER was definitely one I've mentioned, but the reason it was difficult for me is because it was an hour-long drama with so many characters, and the two episodes were far enough apart that the cast had revolved entirely. We had that with Baywatch, too. But Baywatch at least was a little less plotted in a sense that it's like, this is a sand serial killer, here's an eel,
Baywatch is another one I'd love to revisit
Well, I
just
would
because of how
too.
crazy it was.
Some of those crazy ones I'd be down anytime just about, as
Mhm.
well as some of the other good ones, i.e. Columbo.
Exactly, yeah.
Kind of piggybacking on what I said earlier, though, for reasons I didn't mention, there were some early on episodes where I was between being kind of out of it mentally with just where I was in life and then being more nervous, like during each recording, where I had a more unpleasant time just because I was worried I was going to make mistakes. And now I just feel a lot more natural doing it. I don't really think about that.
Yeah, I think there was a lot more anxiety in those first, dozen episodes or so, because it was all so new.
And who wouldn't get nervous about King of Queens?
And as we've learned, myself in particular with this, I can edit better than I ever have been able to. Therefore, we know if something gets fucked up,
Yeah.
I'll be able to fix it.
We'll just
So
cut
it
it out.
doesn't
And that is
matter.
the best segue in history. What kind of stuff gets cut from this podcast? You hear the bullshit we leave in.
Ooh, yeah.
And
There's
Van does this. So
we could
what
do an
is it?
entire episode on stuff that's gotten cut out, I'm sure,
Yeah.
time-wise.
Some
we
of it you
could.
hear it at the end of the podcast, and it's great.
Those are the bloopers, or it's called a stinger at the end. I
Yeah.
love doing those if we have a good one. I will cut out jokes where, in particular, I do this more than anyone, is I push to be crass almost. and it's too crass. And even in the moment, I may know it's too crass, but I'd rather say it
Yeah.
in case it
You
works.
did one of those today, actually, and
I did.
immediately said, I'm not leaving this
Yeah.
in.
I
Cut
have
that one right out.
definitely done those, and I've never once been unpleasantly surprised. Like, Van is always very good about knowing, like, oh, they wouldn't want that in there.
And even if I
And
say
I wouldn't
something
either.
that I mean it one way and it comes out the wrong way, it'll be
Yes.
things like that too. I may not mean it maliciously in the moment.
You didn't
and I don't
present it how
realize
you wanted to, though,
Yeah.
and, like, you don't want people getting the wrong idea.
And then, of course, there's the burp reel,
We have lots of burps, farts, coughs.
old man noises.
Yeah, hacks. We sometimes just shit in our chairs loudly.
Sometimes we'll be sitting here and the neighbors will slam their door 600 times in
Yeah.
the span of 30 seconds. So we just have to start over.
Sometimes there are fireworks for 8 to 40 hours consecutively. We've got one more question before we move on, and that is, what are any of us doing here, and how long must we suffer?
It's a hard question to answer.
That's very philosophical.
And this is specifically from Johnny Radical. He'd like to know.
Eternity is how long, I believe.
We're
we
here
will
till
suffer.
eternity?
Well, until the sun blows up. But by then, we might have colonized other planets.
You mean the human race?
I mean,
like
The grand we,
us.
the royal we.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Indeed. So I think humanity's doomed, but I also think it's doomed to repeat itself and start over. So there is happiness to be found in the newness of the rebirth.
Okay.
I more and more just kind of really wanted to simplify us as humans. I think we've gotten a grand idea of ourselves in our head when really we're just big, dumb animals. And we've done amazing things that, as you alluded to, Van, very well may be our undoing in the end. But end of the day, what we really do is the same as what we've always done. And our brains are only ever going to be able to do that. And I don't like to overcomplicate things. So I think we're just kind of here to do our reproduction and our eating. We're going to die. And that's going to keep happening because that's the way biology works. It's pretty simple, actually.
I think this raises the question then, and it's one I've asked many times, and philosophers have pondered this for years. Are we human or are we dancer?
And you know, Dragula, too, is a song, another song, a different kind of song.
I wish the Killers did a version of Dragula. That'd
They
be all
might,
right.
like some sort of kind of, what do they do now? It's kind of new wavy.
Yeah,
Or I guess it's kind of Springsteen-y now. You know, who he played with is the E Street Band and Clarence Clemens.
Mhm.
Hell of a saxophone player.
He
No,
blows it.
yeah, I think we're all just kind of parasite consumers or whatever, like Spencer said. So, like, and we're going to be here till we die. Our life expectancies, well, this generation might have been shortened by
Little bit.
COVID and our inhumane response to it societally. So, how long must we suffer? Like, however long until we take our final breath, I
Mhm.
guess, is the answer to that one. So, in the meantime, why not record podcasts with your friends about shows that Kevin Sorbo is in? That's what I think.
Or, yeah, for the people out there who don't have a podcast, why not just listen to us do that?
Yeah.
Until you die.
Tell you what, though, if you're out there with your friends recording any Sorbo casts,
Yeah.
send them to us.
Yeah,
though.
that's something we want to know about.
Probably join our network.
We can guest up. Yeah, I have spots
That would be
available.
fantastic.
Just get in touch with me, bootuinc@gmail.com.
So that's it. All anyone has to ask of us for now, guys. I mean, for
There'll be
now.
more. There'll be more as we get bigger and bigger.
Thank you so much, listeners out there, for tuning in to the Boob Tube Boys. Certainly our first 100 episodes. And, well, I guess it was more than 100 because we also had Seinfeld Week and Simpsons Week and other stuff. But it's still our 100th episode. And in truth, it's actually going to be 2 parts to this 100th episode. Don't question the logic. We recorded a lot of stuff for this episode, and instead of giving you one 3-hour clip, I figured I would divide this up. So later on in the week, I'll be releasing part 2 of our 100th episode special. Spencer has a bonus segment for us. We'll finish up according to Jim. We are electing 3 members from the shows we've covered to the Boob Tube Boys Hall of Fame. So stay tuned for that. It's a lot of fun. Brian has something special for us, and then we're going to wrap it all up with a spirited performance of an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. So tune in later in the week for all of that fun stuff. But again, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We really appreciate everyone who downloads and tunes in. Tell your friends. Check out patreon.com/BooTubeInc for bonus shows. And if you like us, you can leave us a little bit of a tip there. We have the YouTube channel. Just search BooTubeInc on there. And of course, you can find us on BooTubeInc.com, BOOTUINC. Now take it away, Jim.